Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to say if you haven't seen my previous video where I'd explained what is depression, I just want you to go over there and check that out before seeing this one, as this one's a follow-up video to that one. Alright, so I've gone over what depression is and some of its most common symptoms, and I wanted to go into more detail on something I said before. I've had depression for 18 years, and before breaking myself out of it, it was a long process that required an unnatural amount of willpower. However, my point isn't to say that I'm better than anybody else. I just want to talk on some of the things that I did in hopes that it'll help others break out much faster than I did. So, when I finally had my breakthrough, it was during a time where I didn't really expect it. So, for several days, I had been painting in my room. It was only myself, the breeze, and the sound of birds as I had my window open. And at first, I didn't notice that I had obtained a certain clarity of mind that I didn't have before. And when I did notice, it was like a great weight over my entire body had been lifted. For the first time in years, I could finally think clearly and didn't feel like there was something always inside my mind that I had to push through to be able to get a thought. Everything that I looked at, every color, every surface was sharper and more vibrant. And my body was just humming with an energy that I had never really experienced in any part of recent memory. And I never imagined that I would reach that point. I never imagined that I would actually break out. So, I'm going to answer these two questions throughout this video. What did I do to get to this break point? And how did I manage to break it down and finally get out? And so, I've thought on this a lot, and the answer is as simple as it is hard. Firstly, it requires the conscious effort and will to change. Seeing as you're watching this video and made it this far, I would say we check that off the list. However, to go into more detail on what I mean by conscious will and effort, I'm just going to explain my point of view real quick. And I was touch and go with this step for a really long time, but essentially what it is, it's a replacement for motivation. Motivation is fleeting. I'm sure everyone knows that. It's almost never there, and even when it is, it's almost never stays for any adequate length of time. And in the beginning, you have to personally want to change. And this is what I mean by conscious will. You have to break through. You have to build up enough power mentally to break through the barrier that depression has put for you and consciously want to change. You have to be willing to change in order to change. And this is what I mean by conscious will. However, as much as it pains me to say, wanting something does not turn it into a reality. A thought without motion is an idea. To turn it into action requires movement and effort. And this is what I mean by conscious will and effort. You have to want it, and then you have to forcibly push yourself to get there. And so, how does this all go into getting a handle on depression? Well, the next two steps are, they sound like buzzwords, and people certainly have turned them into buzzwords over the years. So the next two steps are introspection and metacognition. And I know these words put people off because they sound like something you'd read off of BuzzFeed. So I'm going to explain exactly what these mean. So, by introspection, I mean exactly what it is. And introspection is consciously thinking about your emotions. And what I really mean by this, and I'm going to use a personal point of view here, whenever I face something that riled me up or exaggerated my depression, like put me into a deeper slump than I already was, I had to constantly ask myself why. That's what introspection is. It's asking the question why. Why does it make me feel that way? Or why do I feel like that? Asking yourself these questions is the beginning of introspection. And once you've gotten to the root of that, you can apply metacognition. Now, what do I mean by metacognition? Metacognition, in its simple definition, is thinking about thinking. So, you've asked yourself why through introspection. Now, through this concept, you'll start asking the hows and the whats. How can I prevent this from happening in future? What can I do to safeguard myself from this happening again? My personal experience with this was when I found out what made me feel better and wasn't self-destructive. And by self-destructive, I mean things like binge eating, which I did a lot of, as I'm currently 380 pounds. But I've lost a lot of weight. And what I found was when I did anything I thought was productive, and what's productive will change from person to person, as we all have different values on what's productive. But what I found was productive was simple things that are actually easy to do for normal people, but it's hard to break through the barrier of depression and actually do these things. It's things like doing the laundry, cleaning the house, making videos, and painting my room. Every time I did one of these things, I would feel the weight of depression lessen. And so I tried to compound these things, like really trying to strike while the iron was hot, so to speak. Every time I did one of these things, I would try to do another. And I, at the very least, tried to do one thing I consider productive a day. And really, that's all that matters. You don't have to complete everything at once. Viewing something as a big goal is severely detrimental. You can have those big goals, but you should break them down into workable parts. So, like, if you have an overarching goal like clean the house, you could break it down to a room by room. It's like, today I'll clean this room, today I'll clean that room, and so on and so forth. And breaking things down into little pieces makes it easier to do them. And you could even go even smaller as to cleaning certain portions of the room. Everything doesn't have to be, if I do this, I have to do everything else. It's a simple concept that everybody knows, and they already know it, but they haven't realized it. And once I made this realization, it was actually easy to start doing things, and made it easier to compound the effect to the point where I finally managed to break out. And the reason I bring up these concepts of introspection and metacognition and all this other stuff is that when you really think about it, depression is a battle in the mind. If you can take control of your mind, it becomes that much easier to fight depression. But to take control of your own mind, you have to be you have to put your time and energy to work with it and understand it. So, moving on to this last step, and it's optional, this step, but I want to go through it anyway before I get to the end of the video. So, even though for most of my 18-year journey, I spent a lot of my day-to-day being very much alone. However, I had a group of people where for a few hours every day or every other day, I could go and actually let off steam. And if I had something to talk about, they'd listen. And if I wanted to play with someone and forget about some things, they were there for that too. Support is incredibly important. And I very much recommend that if you don't have someone to talk to or play with, you should actively try to find these people. Everyone needs someone they can talk to. We can't bear the weight of everything by ourselves. That being said, my email is zargrethstreaming@gmail.com. If you ever want to shoot me an email, I check it a few times a day. Now, with all this said and done, I plan on doing a few more videos on this, going in depth on each of the main symptoms of depression that I can think of, which would be things like brain fog, apathy, anxiety, loss of self-worth, and how we can try to deal with that. And if you want to see any specific, if you want to see a video on any specific symptom before any others, just let me know in the comments below, or shoot me an email. Otherwise, I'll just pop them out in whatever order I feel like doing them in. So, anyway, I hope that what I've gone through today has helped some of y'all out. Feel free, again, just feel free to shoot me an email if you have questions. And thanks for dropping by. I'll see you next time.